Hello, and welcome to This Strange Reality. On today's episode, we hear from Zachariah. Zachariah is a witch, psychic medium, death doula, and occult specialist. In this episode, he will chronicle a lifetime of paranormal and spiritual experiences, including a near-death experience in his youth. He talks about the power a name holds and the relationship between grief, trauma, and the spiritual. Here's Zachariah.
My name is Zachariah. I have a lot of different names now as a grown-ass man. Zachariah, Z, Zachariah the Witch, um, different variations. But don't call me Zachary or Zach. I hate that. I don't know why, I just do. It's not my name. Names are interesting to me. Words are powerful to me. It's something I find magical. I was a miracle baby, according to my mother, and in a supernatural sense, she was told before I was ever born that she would never have children because she had multiple issues with her anatomy. She had many miscarriages, and she really wanted to be a mom. And then she was told that, and she gave up. But she had a dream. So fast forward from the last time she heard she couldn't have kids, she was 20. She had a dream one night where she was in Burger King in line for food, and she was standing there waiting behind other people, and right next to her was a tall man that was taller than her, a head taller than her, with his arm around her shoulder, and he looked down at her and he said, "It's going to be okay, Mom." And then sometime later, within that same week or two, my mother went to a theme park that's in Ohio called Cedar Point, and she rode the blue streak, and then after she got off she threw up, and then she didn't have any fun for the rest of the day. Goes to the doctor, "Hey, you're pregnant." And so having that dream and then leading up to finding out, like, wait, what? uh, really freaky. But it was then that she knew that she was going to have a child. So when she presented the news to my father, she felt that it was very important to give me a very fitting name, because on my father's side, names are important, because of our beliefs with our Cherokee practices, that when you're born, who you're who you are is identified a lot as a statement when you come into the world. So not only are you given a born name and surname, you're also given a spiritual name. So she chose Zachariah because it means whom God remembers. And in the story of Zachariah, without getting too biblical here, he didn't believe God when God said that his wife could have a child because she was so old. And God was like, "I'm going to prove you wrong, buddy." She got pregnant. And so God's deal with him was that, see, I didn't forget. You wanted a son, you wanted a child, here you go. So that was why he was then named Zachariah the prophet. But I've always felt that my name has really been associated with who I am as a person. Some people say it's in translation, one the Lord does not forget, one the Lord guides or is always there for in assistance. But to me, whom God remembers is the most important, because I never feel forgotten. I always feel that the things that I've done in my life have permanence and meaning. But I also feel I'm so lucky all the time in such bizarre ways. I've always been a person on the fringe. I moved out when I was 17. I've been a very independent person my whole life, even though I have four younger brothers. I have always just kind of been like, spread your wings, go figure shit out. Moved a lot, all over the country, all over Canada, just everywhere. And I don't have any regrets, and I loved it. So, my spiritual path, though, has been quite an intense journey as well. And it started right before I was 3. It began with me waking up in the middle of the night. We were living in Ohio. It was, my mother had left my father, and we were then in Ohio. He was down in Florida with my paternal grandfather and the rest of his side of the family. I'm very young, and I mean, even in hindsight now, looking back at that part of my life, there's still so many things that I've recalled where people that are my elders are like, how do you remember that? You weren't even 3. And it's like, I just do, because I knew it was, when I look at it now, it's like, because it meant something to me, or it had an impact on me, and it was positive, or it was good. Like, I remember my grandfather holding me, and I remember a lot of people around sometimes. And I've even just digitized VHS tapes that I had for years that I didn't even get to watch. But now that they're digitized, I've watched them, and it's like, oh, that's this memory. It was my birthday, and I was 1. So it's like, I guess I remember more than I thought. My first spiritual experience was waking up in the middle of the night, and I don't remember saying this, but I was told, I kept yelling, Grandpa's dead, Grandpa's dead, Grandpa's dead. And I was crying and I was upset. All I knew was my dream. I was scared of my dream. I was in my dream, I was small, like I was at that time. I don't know if I was 2, but I just knew I was little, and I was running through the snow. And I immediately knew, while I was running through the snow in this dream, there were all these big, tall, black, wet-looking trees. I don't know if they were pines or what, but I didn't know where I was. I wasn't familiar with this type of wood, because all I knew was like Florida, and then moving to Ohio, the suburbs. So it was somewhere I'd never been, but it felt familiar. And so I'm running, and it's snowy and it's quiet, but I'm afraid. And it's just like the really wet, crunchy snow, and it's like you get stuck, and it's like, I'm already small, this sucks. And I realize there's something chasing me, and I'm running and I'm running, and then I remember I try to climb up over these fallen logs, and I get over it, but then I fall down on my face. And so when I roll over from being on my stomach and onto my back, right there in my face, on top of me, standing over me, with it not showing its teeth, but just serenely staring into my eyes, like that's what it was meant to do, was this wolf. It was huge. And we were face to face. And that was when I woke up. So it wasn't as if it was going to eat me or something. It was just, for some reason, I was afraid, and it was coming for me, and because it had a reason to go after me. And that's when I woke up, and apparently I was screaming, Grandpa's dead, Grandpa's dead. And I don't remember saying that. I still to this day cannot say if I was for sure, but that's what everyone said they heard. It was my mom and her friends and her then husband that she married, this guy. So that's what I know. And then that night, my grandfather died at the age of 89 on my father's side. So it was like, what? So that was my first tapping into something else. And I think, again, in hindsight, this collection of stories, and you grow up with people, especially like your parents or whoever raises you, they're there for that experience too. And everybody has their own reaction to those things. And my mom, and I say this openly and honestly, we have no relationship now at this point in my life, and that's by choice, because of whatever reasons I don't need to get into. But growing up, I look at it all now, and I'm like, oh, she was always afraid. She was afraid of me. She was afraid of the things that were happening around me and to me. And I know in my heart that it's because she was experiencing them with me, but she had her own experiences when she was a kid that I learned later from other adults in my family, like my maternal grandfather, her father. And I always found that really weird, because it's like, I guess for me now, doing what I do in the present day, I took all that stuff that I experienced, even from that beginning, and was like, oh, if I meet anyone that has a shared experience, or is confused, or this makes them afraid, I want to be able to help them not be that way, or to help guide them the best that I know how, or give them tools to move forward with something better than having someone react and go, oh, that's not real, or oh, that's not, don't talk about that, that's weird. But everyone else sees that kind of shit. Other kids talk about that stuff. So it's like I started to see that pattern from that point on. And then the other things that I started to see that I started to keep to myself, because that's all I knew what to do. And I knew that that's what I needed to do. My other experience, like I said, I had a near-death experience, which I should not remember, but I do. There's certain parts I don't remember because I was unconscious. But one day I was playing in my room. I was 3 years old, and I came out because I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't breathe. All of a sudden, couldn't breathe. According to my mom, that day, my face was blue when I came into the living room. So I guess I hadn't been breathing for a while. She rushed me to the hospital. I remember closing my eyes in the car and then waking up in a hospital bed with like beeping and lights and just weird, like, what the hell's going on? And like abdomen pain. So come to find out, I had a growth at the base of my esophagus that rapidly formed around my airway and closed, and that's what stopped me from breathing. Like, in my head, I just now picture, like, imagine if somebody just took their hand and just like closed it around like a tube, and just like when you put a kink in a hose, same thing. Could not take in air at all. I was trapped. I suffocated from my own body closing on me. And I think that's also part of why I'm claustrophobic to this day. I have this experience because it's like, like I said, forget something in the car and then I come to in the hospital. But when I'm conscious, as time goes on, and it's like I'm in there for a couple of days and the monitoring, I start to remember things that I kept to myself for the longest time, for many years, which was, I remembered what it was like when I was, as I found out later, when I died for over 2 minutes. What happened? I remember how dark it was, like not dark like black, but a nothingness. And scientists talk about dark matter or nothingness, and it's like you can't say it's black because black is also a substance. It's something that is put together to form a color. This is nothingness. This is like when you have a thought and there's nothing there, no one can see it, no one can perceive it. It could be anything. Try to imagine that times 1,000. And again, you're not constricted by your physical body. And again, I was 3 years old. So I'm all of a sudden downloading all this weird, intense information and sensation and feelings. And for some reason, I pinpoint how it feels like I'm floating around. And I was into like Conan and He-Man and like superheroes by that point in my life, and She-Ra, the Princess of Power, and all this stuff. So I was like, oh, this is like magic. Like I can do whatever I want. And so I'm floating around in this nothingness, and I start to gravitate towards what sounds like people talking. And I go over here, and again, I don't see anything. It's just what I'm hearing. And it's like thoughts, and I guess maybe it is audible, but I'm not in my body, so I guess it's not, but I remember it. But I do that multiple times. I float to all these voices talking. Sometimes it's one person. There was a person crying. There was a person that sounded like maybe they were praying. But the one that stuck out the most was the one that also brought upon like sensations and smells. I remember hearing the sounds of dinnerware and plates, and then a language that I didn't know because I just didn't know it at the time. I've later learned that it was German, but it sounded like a family, maybe they were in Germany, having breakfast. And because I could smell like syrup or something, and that's it. I didn't want to, I wasn't afraid, but I felt like I was traveling really far, really fast, and I had no limit. And that's why I said to my child self, oh, this is like magic. I can do whatever I want. It was a very freeing experience. Little did I know I was dead, and that's bad. Oh my God. But I guess ignorance is bliss. No one told me, and this is the crazy part, when you learn as an adult who decides to figure out, a lot of us have depression, or a lot of us are figuring out things that they're diagnosable now. I found out that I was diagnosed with PTSD in the last 2 years. And so it was just a lot of those things that I freely talk about. I didn't realize that those things aren't normal. I didn't realize that when people would say, how are you alive? Or how are you not in jail or a drug addict compared to the rest of the people you were around growing up? I didn't know that wasn't normal. So the spiritual part of me that was connected was normal. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. It was, and yeah, scary. There's some bad shit too, and there's some freaky shit that we're never going to understand, or we don't yet. But having that near death experience, I remember coming back home, and it was like, and I don't want to make this about my mom, but like she was the key person that made me realize like I wasn't putting up with anybody's shit. I wasn't me anymore. Or I was me. I was more myself. I was more of who I was meant to be. It was like something stepped in and something was guiding me from that point on. I was fully connected to a voice, an energy, a presence, not possession or anything, but like just I always knew things. I always knew how to be myself, how to do what was right, how to like not end up in jail or a drug addict like other people in my family, like how to take the gifts that I was given and use them for the better. And it turned into a lot of being the adversary. It turned a lot of my life into being a pioneer, for so many things, especially the spiritual and the supernatural stuff, because like it was so taboo. And like I said earlier, I learned my mom was afraid of a lot of the things that represented my connection to the spirit, because on my father's side, the Cherokee side, the Irish and Cherokee, they were very into honoring the cultural practices of our ancestors. And so my paternal grandfather was chief. He was leading and guiding people. He was known as Elkhart. He taught ritual and ceremony and sun dances and all these things. And that was also really conflicting for me too, because my mom always kept it from me or didn't know enough about it to talk about it. And then, I later learned like it wasn't all her fault. It's, the criminal history, the bad things that are on both sides of the family. It is really miraculous that I'm not a piece of shit, horrible person to this day. Like, I am so shocked that I'm not like any of the other men in my family on both sides. Like, it's just, and a lot of them are dead. So I can say that freely. They're not going to come kill me. So, but yeah, some of my first experiences with the paranormal were very intense like that. Others were, it's like I told my therapist when I was really little, I just somehow knew how to push a person's buttons, especially adults. It was almost like it would slap them spiritually in the face to like snap out of whatever the hell they were doing. There was a situation in my life where I ended up in foster care, and it was so scary and it was so weird. And the lady she was horrible. She was one of those people you see in like movies where they just collect the paycheck and they abuse the kids. But when I came in, I mean, no, she was afraid of me. She ran from me, and I'm like 5, okay? But there was things that I said to her that I don't remember to this day, but I knew it was something that I shouldn't have known about her as a person. It was things that I was perceiving and seeing around her that were not only protecting me, but it was protecting the other kids that were there. I'm going to cry. Protecting the other kids that were there with me. And I'm so grateful that that voice or that guidance was there. I knew the day that the lady from the social worker, and here's the other thing. I knew the social worker that dropped me off, even though she said, I might not see you again, I knew she was going to come back to get me, and I knew the day it was going to happen. And she took me back home to my mom, who was then remarried to this person in Ohio, in a different house. So that's, a lot of this intensity, a lot of this change, a lot of these shifts. So in present day, I'm just so used to that. But my constant has always been the spiritual, the supernatural, the arts, expressing yourself. It's like my mantra is just don't be a piece of shit. It's that easy. We can only do the best that we can each day. The growth of who I am to this day, it didn't come easy. To me, it felt easy, but like I said, when people say the same thing that you hear time and time again of, how are you alive? How are you the person that you are today? That doesn't make sense. Like, it got to a point where instead of being afraid of myself, I was afraid of people thinking that I was always lying, because I've had such a colorful, varied, spontaneous life. Some of it was by choice and a lot of it wasn't. That's why I have PTSD. But as an adult, once I was 17, I decided to just go for it. I decided to pursue what I was into and travel and see the world, because I knew for the longest time that I was meant for more in so many ways. It wasn't an ego thing. It wasn't a pride thing. It was the fact that like I felt so sad around the people that I was around in places in the small towns of Monroe and Toledo, which are in Michigan and Ohio. Like some of them are really good people, and then others it's just like they're stuck in a vacuum. And that's what I would call it. Was even when I didn't understand it spiritually, it was a vacuum. It was taking the life out of people and making them think they didn't have a bigger purpose. And so, yeah, I spread my wings. I left, pursued the music career for a while because music and spirit go hand in hand. It's a hidden language to me, the vibration and the energy and the message and the stories. I started acting. I remember the first time I was on stage, I was like 9, and I had a solo in some church musical. Um, it's kind of just been like, see what happens, but I always know that I'll be fine because, like I said, my name. I just feel lucky. I'm meant to be here. I had a lot of those really condensed experiences in the beginning of my life, and then a lot of the PTSD stuff of like parent always finding a new boyfriend, always moving, always running in the middle of the night, like foster care, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And to me, it was just normal. But then one day, I stayed at a friend's house who was, their mom was my babysitter, and it was a friend of mine, this other girl, and I'm maybe 7, I think 6 or 7. I'm gonna say 7. That sounds right. I stayed over because my mom had to work or something. The next day was Sunday, and they were like, "Oh, are you gonna come with us?" And I was like, "Where?" And they're like, "To get on the bus." And I was like, "To church?" I had never been to church. I didn't know what that was. I knew about like I said, the Sundances and the powwows, hearing about that, having vague memories of it. My mom said she went to Catholic school and hated the nun because the nun was abusive to her, and that was all I knew about Catholicism. So I was like, religion's bad, or religion's something else that I don't need to be a part of. I was like, I guess. I didn't really have a choice anyway. So we went, and I went through the Sunday school thing. Just it kind of was like in one ear and out the other. And that was like because they had a separate thing for the kids while the adults were in the main tabernacle, as they called it. This was a Baptist church. It's in, I'll say the name, Toledo Southern Baptist. It's in Ohio. I was in the kids part, Sunday school, and then it was time to go and get with whoever you're with, and then get back on the bus to go home. So you have to go through the tabernacle. The tabernacle was still doing like their ending closeout prayer, praise and worship thing, and they were baptizing people. Now, it isn't the baptism, and it wasn't the music when I walked in. And again, I knew nothing about what a church and its whole operation was about. And I knew at that point in my life, I had no knowledge about it except what my mom told me about being a kid with the nuns, and that's it. And maybe like a building because I thought it looked pretty and gothic and cool. So I walk into this tabernacle, and there's whatever song is going on, and people are singing. And Southern Baptist is similar to like highly spiritual Pentecostal, where it's like they still believe in the miracles and prayer and the power of that and healing and stuff, but baptism is their primary focus, as I've learned later, because it is an anointing of God and cleansing yourself to be spiritually clean. So I walk in, and all those things are happening, and it's like, whoa, this spectacle, like kind of like a concert. You're like, who started a party, And I see the pastor up in the thing, which is above the pulpit of the stage, which was very theatrical. And he's talking about this person that's standing in the water with him. And it's like, I think it was like they put it up there in this balcony. It's like a jacuzzi almost or something, which is like very modern. And he says something, and then they agree to something. And I still don't remember what he said. And then he dunked her in the water, and then she came out, and everybody's like, yay! But I swear to God, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. It wasn't the baptism, it wasn't the music, it wasn't the people. Before that even happened, I felt something come into the room and fill the whole space. And some people say it's the Holy Spirit. To me, Holy Spirit is the same as God, the Great Spirit. It's just a different vocabulary. It's an energy. It's a presence. It comes from the same source, maybe a different language, same TV show, different subtitles. So I felt this fill the room, and I got emotional. And I'm like 7, and I'm like, why am I? Whoa, what is that? And it was just like I wasn't even when that happened. I wasn't paying attention really to what was going on. It was happening to me. And I will never forget that feeling. I got chills. I felt warmth. I felt it all over head to toe. And I felt like it was right. And that's how it's always felt since that day. And I've found that feeling. And this is what I try to tell Christians. This is what I try to tell atheists. Some of them get it. Some of them are like, oh, fuck you. You're whatever. You can find that feeling when you focus on your truth and your purpose, and you do what is right for yourself, and you do what is not harmful to others. It's that simple. And so I found that feeling there that day, to the point that I was so excited when it was time for me to go home. I ran in and said to my mom, because it was just me and her, I want to go get baptized. And she's like, what? Because we weren't religious. We weren't those people. It was just me and her. And she was like, what is this about? Is it my child being indoctrinated into a cult? What the hell is this? She goes with me. And again, another psychic thing, call it psychic now, telling the story. But then it was something where like I knew something was going to happen. My mom decided to get baptized, and I did, and so did she, just out of nowhere. And it's also the thing that was so significant. And again, I don't think in my interpretation that it was the specific religion or the people or the music or the prayer. It was that presence. And I was so empowered by it when I came home, telling my parents, who I knew was an alcoholic, about it, that it shook them. So when she went to that church with me, it shook her enough to get baptized. And within that 48-hour period, she quit drinking for decades. Maybe she wasn't always Christian, but she wasn't drinking anymore. And it was like instant. And it was just like that was meant to happen. But my point with that story is like that was what propelled me in my journey of what is this? What is going on? It wasn't the near-death experience. There wasn't the freaky dreams that had happened ever since then for over and over and over again. It wasn't seeing a shadow thing or a wolf man. Yes, that stuff's cool and I could get into it, but it was this. It was going into an unfamiliar place with a bunch of people that believed in whatever this thing was in unison together that I had no context clues about. And I didn't need to because it was unspoken. It came to me and showed me what it was. And I felt it. And I was like, this is cool. I love this. I want more of this. I need this for myself. This will help my life. And it has. And what I found is that it got weaker and stronger when I wasn't going towards the things or learning the things that were necessary for me. Because that's what's wrong, in my opinion, with religion is indoctrination and conversion. Just because the message works for you with whatever you're learning in whatever context and whatever the literature is, doesn't mean it's going to work for me. But I focused on the feeling that was embodied of it was a love channel. It was a frequency that I was not getting in my life because I was a kid from an abusive home and PTSD and all this other shit. Love was weird. But in that context, it was awesome. And I didn't see it, so I didn't think that it was somebody trying to hurt me. But I knew it was there. So I took that with me, and I started to discover other things. I still liked being in the church because I was able to sing. I was in the praise team. I was doing the creative and artistic things that I had wanted to do anyway. It encouraged me to do those things. But when it started to get constrictive and weird, and then as you get older, you realize I feel different things that other people don't who are also boys, or I have experiences that other people don't who say that they're spiritual, and now I'm being told that that's not of God. And so when I shared my prophetic dreams and I shared my ability to discern spirits, when we went to a different church years later, my mom told the elders, and they advised that I join at the age of 14 the spiritual prayer warrior team. This was a thing, like Ghostbusters. We would go to people's houses as these people. We were anointed by the elders in the church to help, I don't want to say save people, but deliverance. Like if they were being repressed by an evil force or presence, we were a part of that. And it was a little scary because that was when I also learned there's another side to this force, an unseen force that exists. And it's just as strong, if not stronger, because people are more susceptible to it. And it's more toxic and seeps into the pores and things you don't see because you don't pay attention all the time. That was freaky. And I'm 14, and they're like, they tell me what my gift is, and I knew that they were right. But I finally had the lingo for it, which was, I went, the first house that we went to go bless and do deliverance for this family. It was a grandmother taking care of her former addict daughter and her insubordinate child. That's how I'll put it. The second we walked in that front door, I ran into, like, I felt like a invisible wall, and it felt like nails on a chalkboard. I was just like, oh, I don't want to be here. But luckily, one of the people who had an appointed gift of the spirit that was on the team with me said, what? And I told him what I experienced. We went outside and I told him in detail, and he goes, holy crap, you're the only one that has the ability to discern spirits. He's like, if I ask you how many things you think are in there that you can't see, do you have a number? And I was like, yeah, there's 5. I covered my mouth because I was like, why did I just say that? But that was when it started to click for me that, like, there's these gifts and these abilities that some people call psychic, some people call the Holy Spirit, some people say it's shamanism or medicine, or, again, same TV show, different subtitles. So it's like, I'm like, oh, this is a power that I have. This is some ability. I am like X-Men, you know. But it was fucking scary, and I just, at the same time, I loved it. So I started to learn that, like, what wasn't working for me, it wasn't those experiences. It was the fact that, like, because of who I was growing up into a man, and how it conflicted with religion and what the Bible said, I didn't want to be a part of that, because that didn't feel like what I felt that was pure love and acceptance. And it also didn't seem very Christ-like, not to be political, but being Christ-like means to do the things that Jesus did, do unto others, have compassion, forgiveness. Like, the hell are you guys doing? You know, they basically said my mom was the whore of Babylon. She divorced my 4 younger brothers, her then husband, because he was emotionally and verbally abusive. They said that she should have stayed with him because you should stay committed to that person. It's a commitment you make between them and the eyes of the Lord. It's like, well, I don't think God would have wanted that for us, if that's what you're saying. You know, that's a human choice. That's a legally binding contract that you decided to have. That's not a God thing. That's us. That's humans. But I was bad for saying that. I was annoying for asking questions. I was annoying for pointing out contradictions in their context in their religion. And it wasn't because I wanted to be facetious or annoying. It was just like, I wanted to see, like, is it me? Am I the issue? You know, and no, it wasn't. So I left the church, and luckily the church that I went to, I had a good relationship with the head pastor, and I don't want to say his name because I respect his privacy. He was the only person that was ever real with me, had no issue with me, understood where I was, and he advised me. He gave me a packet of information and printed a bunch of shit and gave me all this literature and said, read about all the theologies of the world, study world religions, understand everything in order to understand yourself. And I was like, what? He's like, but don't tell anyone I told you that. And to this day, I don't know why he did that. I don't know why he knew to do that, but it was so affirming, because I didn't even ask for that. I just said, I'm leaving the youth group. I don't want to be a leader. I'm realizing that I probably need to leave home soon. I was 16 at the time, you know. So all these things were happening, and on top of it, hormones, you know. So, but he was the one logical, reasonable adult that was just like, I see you. I'm not like you at all, but I see you, and I know what you need, because I understand. Maybe he met someone like me in college that they weren't a piece of shit, but they were really spiritual and they were a good person. You know, that's what I think now. It's like, maybe that's what it was. Hopefully, so it helped me, and I started to realize, like, oh, a lot of the stuff that I like and a lot of the stuff that I'm drawn to is in my ancestry. It's in things around me that I've grown up with, and it started to all make sense. I started to connect the dots. It was only when I started to let people tell me what I was, like, oh, you're a medium, oh, you're psychic, oh, you're this, and when I was just like, yeah, I'll go with that, that was when it started to get cloudy and weird. So then we get into the witch thing. I was curious, and the one that got my attention the most was witchcraft, because witchcraft is in every culture. It is. It's timeless. It's about bending and manipulating energy and forces around you. It stems from animism, where all things are alive and have energy, and it's how we tried to understand and explain the world around us before we even had language. But that became weird too. It became muddled. I started to practice and get the basics going. I learned from, like, Witchfox. It was this old website that was kind of like the Facebook of witchcraft, which had forums and bulletins, and people had profiles and services, and like there was clergy, and there was priestesses, and there was like coven meetups, and this was all like when the internet was still pretty slow, like DSL. It was before Wi-Fi and broadband. So, and I was doing a lot of this in secret because this was all leading up to me leaving the church anyway. I was already curious anyhow, and I think that's also why that pastor knew, like, you're onto something for yourself, so go towards that. And I did, and I studied and studied, and I learned and learned. And I think when people say online now, do your research, study, it isn't as simple as typing in the search bar a keyword and phrases. Like, this was sitting at the library, even going to libraries that don't let you check out those books, and you sit there and you just take notes on what sticks out to you. I learned about books that don't get released or sold really anymore, like about mesmerism, which was controversial for its time, and it should be, because you can literally fuck up someone's brain with hypnotism. But I learned about so many different psychosocial behaviors that are adopted, like Carl Jung. I don't think he stole indigenous practices, but I think he learned so much, and that's why he was so spiritual. He was into astrology, he was into medicine and shamanism, and the directions and the elements, and how it associated with who we are as people and our story. And I found that fascinating. I was like, same thing I said, same TV show, different subtitles. So I'm like, huh. And so it's like, that's what I found interesting, was like, I realized my journey up this mountain was connecting science to spirituality, connecting reason to unreason, or connecting logic to all these illogical thoughts that were quackery and craziness, and like, you need to be in a mental hospital. I still believe to this day, and as we're discovering, that a lot of these neuroses and a lot of these conditions that people have are actually latent abilities that were smothered in younger years. I do think that some of them are a part of like poor nutrition and poor upbringing, and maybe they are biological, but a lot of the mental ones, you'll see that there's a lot of people who have amazing pattern recognition. They're really good at cold reading people and situations. They're very good at not just sympathizing, but really feeling and empathizing with others. That's why the empath thing blew up so much in the last decade. It's like we're trying to put the vocabulary on what we don't understand, or all of the ancestors were telling us existed, but they didn't have the vocabulary to make it sound real. Why does it need to sound real? And so that's what I've finally accepted, is that all of this sounds like a work of fiction. My life is one big mythology. I believe in magic. I believe in ghosts. I believe in aliens. It's all fucking real to me. And I'm okay with that. And it's because it took me 38 fucking years to have every type of experience imaginable, from dying to being abandoned to almost being murdered to being in love to hating someone to the point that I want to murder them. Like, all these different things to say that. It's not easy. That is the human experience. It's like the Buddhists say, you will get a body, you will live a life, and it will be different for you compared to everybody else. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's why I really believe in, just don't be a piece of shit. Just try. Just do your best, you know. And if you happen to have gifts and abilities, learn about where they might be coming from. And so that's what I'm seeing now with witchcraft, is like, it made sense to me. And I also liked the fact that, I'm a gay man, and when I adopted the word witch, Zachariah the witch, it felt so powerful. And I don't want to say I got my power back or it was empowering. I already had power. I just wanted people to know what I knew about myself. I wanted them to know what felt right to me, so that there was no fucking question about the fact that, like, oh no, I'm owning this. And you can say I'm nuts and you can say I'm weird. Thank you, because most of my life I was already pioneering and carving out a path in a small podunk town where everybody was, you're the devil, or you're this, or you're that. And it's like, okay, I'm going to show you something different though, and you're going to shut up. And they did. And that's sort of been my journey, is like coming through love and grace and humility and humble beginnings, as I put it with my friend Ansley. It's an acceptance, and it's just a journey that you go on. And I found mine. And so I it's none of it's odd or weird to me. It makes sense. And so when things have happened throughout my life, like dreams and a continuation of sharing the same dream with a sibling, I found that by the time I was really, like, I was more comfortable with it by the time I was like 19. And that's where I start a lot of this story, is knowing all of that and what I want to do and who I am. And yes, I'm on a paranormal team called the Toledo Paranormal Research Society by that point, and I was their intuitive investigator, and it was the first time I'd ever done something outside of church doing that kind of shit. But it was the same thing, just a different context. So it was like we would do house clearings and stuff and get evidence, but we weren't praying to Jesus. It was just like, get out of here, you don't belong here, you know? Same thing. I'm doing it. So I'm 19, and this is kind of where like the 4-year story starts, but it's really not that long, but it's just a lot of layers. So I'm 19. I had a dream about my maternal grandfather. His name is James. And he and I were close. He was still alive at this point. I was so grateful that out of all the fucked upness of my life and all the things that were not my fault, he was always my friend. It made so much sense. I just watched a home video of him that a relative uploaded, who I also don't talk to, but someone found it, one of my brothers, and sent it to me. And I was just like, God, it's weird when you forget what a person's voice, how they speak, because you haven't heard it in so long. But you always feel it. You don't hear it in your mind, but you feel how it made you feel. It's like what they say. It's like people won't remember you necessarily, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And that's what it is with my grandfather. It's like, it's just like everything he said, I just hung on to every word. And it was the same way too. He would watch me talking, and I knew he was really listening to me. So I'm 19. I had this dream, and it's in my dream. I'm sitting in a chair that's in the hallway of a hospital, and I'm nervous, and I'm looking down at my feet, and I'm like trying to find some focal point, because I'm like, how long have I fucking been sitting here? Why am I here? Okay, I'm sitting there, and this little girl comes up to me. This little girl, sorry, oh, I haven't told this story in a while. This little girl comes up to me, and she hugs me, and immediately I knew it was someone related to me. And she looked so much like one of my brothers that is alive now. Like if that brother was a female, like born a girl, like they could have been twins, maybe paternal. She hugged me. She's like, "I've missed you so much. It's so good to see you." And I was like, I just said her name. I was like, "Elizabeth." She goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Why are you here?" She's like, "I need to tell you something." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "You need to be around your grandpa more, because he doesn't have a lot of time." It's like, okay. But this is a two-part thing here. Like, I'm dreaming about a sister that I never knew that was supposed to be born. And I'm dreaming about a message that she's giving me about a future moment that's going to happen within 3 years. And I'm going to find out the truth within that same time frame of when this dream happened. So going back to that, she tells me this message. I wake up, and I'm very emotional. I don't get emotional from my dreams. They're not ever that real, usually. And when they are, I know it's not a dream. It's a visitation. It's different. This was a visitation. I don't know where I was and where this hospital was, but I was just like, I need to call my grandpa. My grandpa left town for a little while. He started to act a little weird, only because I noticed, because we were close. My mom didn't notice. Nobody noticed. I noticed. And one day we were alone. And I had had that dream a couple days before. He had just come back from Alabama. He was hanging out with his friend and his friend's wife. He was like from the military. They were buddies from there. And I'm sitting there, and like at that time in my life, like we would have coffee, and like I smoked at that time, which don't smoke, people. It's so bad. Cigarettes. So we were having a cigarette and sitting at the kitchen table, and I said, "I had a dream about you." He goes, "Oh yeah, what was it?" And I was like, "Well, I dreamt about this girl, Elizabeth. She said she was my sister," which I wouldn't find out this information to be confirmed till later. I'll get to that part after this. Like I dreamt about this girl. She came to me and said, "You need to spend time with your grandpa. He doesn't have a lot of time left." And he's like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I was like, and honestly, and like it was in that moment, and he had experienced me getting like information in the moment. I was like, you know what's funny? In my head just now, I imagine that when you die, you're gonna die right here with a cigarette, right here in this spot that you always sit in when the coffee's on in it, to a T. Okay, so remember I said that. So I tell him that, and he goes, "No, yeah, you're probably right." And he goes, "Well, I'll let you know what your dream was." And I was like, "Oh fuck." He for 2 months had been going back and forth with doctors and tests, had found out too late that he had stage 4 lung cancer. And my grandpa being my grandpa, which is, I adopt this part too. If I'm to that point, quality of life is more important to me than trying to hold on for everybody. Because why would I want to be a living corpse for people to look at? Ew. So he told me the time frame. He said that the dream was pretty accurate, and that he did want to spend a lot of time with me because we were very close. And I later told my mom about the dream because she had gotten the information from my grandpa and about his condition. She had known before me, but never said anything, which was always a trait of hers, to not share important information. I told her about the dream with the girl, and I forgot that in between two of my brothers, like one that's born and then the one that this girl looked like, she had a miscarriage. She was so quiet about it, I just forgot that it happened. Okay, and she gave this person a name, and it was Elizabeth Tamar. And Tamar means tree, and Elizabeth has its own thing. And I was just like, what? And it was, again, she withheld this information from everybody. It was her personal burden to bear, which that's fine. I'm not a woman. I don't know what that's like. I don't. But to have her come to me in that way, and I had no idea that she was supposed to physically exist, but unfortunately she didn't. And I just knew who she was. I was just like, and my mom's like, well, what else did she say? I was like, that was it. She was just talking to me. She goes, oh. I was like, and then, again, it's that resentment and that weird shit that some people do in our lives when you have like a connection to something because maybe they didn't work on themselves enough. I don't fucking know. It's not my problem. So I had this experience, the whole thing with my grandpa, and then I'm 19, going into my 20s. All of a sudden, my dad reappears in my life. My father, who had been in prison since I was 9. I'm not saying that was good, but it was weird how he just in a flash showed up out of nowhere. Because I stopped talking to him, I stopped corresponding, I stopped writing while he was in prison. He shows up at my grandfather's place because my grandfather has lived in the house that my great grandfather built. So it's not like he's changed his number, and he's never changed his address. So James was really easy to find. Jim, as everybody called him. So my grandpa's like, hey, you need to come down here. Your dad's here. And I was like, what? Yeah, your dad's here. And I was like, no, he's not. Yeah, he showed up with like his wife and her daughter. And I was like, what the fuck? But I knew this was bad because the details are my father was supposed to be like on parole in Florida. And then I decided to just not engage with him for years in correspondence. But then I found out from a relative of mine, they would keep me updated on his whereabouts and stuff because I didn't want any surprises. He was a dangerous person, to put it lightly. So not to me, but just dangerous in general. So my grandpa is casual, and he's like, yeah, he's gonna stay here for however long he wants to see you, yada yada. So to me, right now in this story, that's unimportant. I do have an interaction with him and my mom, and we decided to have a conversation, and I asked questions that I didn't get to ask for a long time. And I was an adult. I was 20 at that time, and I'm glad that it happened. But my grandpa was the facilitator of all of this. My grandpa was the force of why this all started, from the dream to then. So he's was more important in this whole thing, and he still is. And my father did not care for anything that I said, even out of my self-expression and love or understanding of who he was in my life or wasn't. His ego really got in the way. And then fast forward, he got picked up by the FBI in Vegas because apparently he had been on the run for over a year, and I didn't know that. But it made sense why we would get weird phone calls asking about if we had any information on him, and they were harassing the rest of my family. And for some reason, my dad just knew go to Jim on Zach's mom's side because no one will think that you're there, and they didn't. He could have stayed there for years probably, and they never would have been the wiser. When he left, and it was just in a huff because he was whoever he was, my grandpa even more than my mom. My grandpa knew, like, oh, that was fucked up. Like, what a piece of shit. Like, I used to like that guy. He didn't like hear your side of anything. And that was when I got to have, again, another important thing. I told my grandpa, I was like, I'm really glad that you've been in my life, especially at the time that you did, when you like re-entered and you did the things that you did to make amends with your children, and then to form a relationship with me and even my brothers. I'm so happy for that, and thank you. He's like, I love you and I believe in you, and you're always my favorite. He's like, stop fucking saying that. He would always say that. He started to get a little bit better. He did hypnosis to quit smoking, and he loved it, and it worked. He did acupuncture too. He had never done it. He thought it was all nuts, but he did it and it worked. He quit. He smoked for so long, his whole life, and he quit. Had no issue. And then I'm 21. We're going to the dentist. I'm driving, and it's me and my mom and my brothers, and we're in the office waiting, and my mom gets a phone call, and she falls to the floor, and she's sobbing, and she goes, no, no, no. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And when she's finally able to tell me, she's like, oh, the nurse came in, and your grandpa's dead. And I was just like, fuck. I didn't even know how to react. I wanted to cry, but I knew that I had to stay composed and drive us and get out of where we were, because no one else would be able to go to his house, because they need someone to be there to then assess and do the shit. And I'd already seen dead bodies and stuff, but this was my best friend. I'm 21. This is like the first time it's happening to me as a person, as a frontal lobe developed person, And remember when I said how I told my grandpa how he would die? I was right. He wasn't sitting in the chair with coffee and a cigarette, but he had gotten up. He made coffee. It was still on. A cigarette was almost done burning by the time we got there, because it was like within that hour, I'm not even kidding, within that 20 minutes of us being able to get there. That's because it was like perfect timing. The cigarette had just become all ash at the base of the filter. And he was laying on the floor on his side of the table. Like he laid down because he was tired and didn't want to walk to his bed. And he died. And I was like, motherfucker. And he's like, yeah, you're probably right. And I was like, you're an asshole. You're such an asshole, But he wasn't done. And this is the crazy part about this story, is like, him in death, talk about a powerful presence. So my grandpa made his presence known over and over and over again. First instance was that issue where when someone dies, people fight over belongings, yada, yada. I'm not even going to get into it. I had a dream, and again, not a dream of visitation. My grandpa knocks on my door. I open it, and he's outside the screen door, and I was about to open it. He goes, no, I don't need to come in. I was like, what? And he's like, I'm pissed. I was like, what? And he goes, look at what he did. My grandpa's blue truck was split in half, but it was like comical. I was like, what the fuck did you do? And he goes, your uncle did this. And then I woke up. We get a call at the house, and it's my mom, because she went to go down to the house because it's 20 minutes away, to like start the process, because we were going to move into that house. We were going to like finish rehabbing it and move in. The truck was gone. My grandfather's truck was gone. My uncle stole it. And within that same time of him stealing it, me having the visitation, apparently because of where that uncle lived, he lived on a road that's shaped like a T. So he's at the end of the T, where like if you drive down the lane, if you don't stop, you can just run into his house. That's what happened. The truck was parked sideways, and another truck couldn't stop, and it split it in half when it ran into it. And my grandpa was pissed. And it happened in the middle of the night when they were asleep, and they woke up from the loud crash, and that's how they found out. But you know what? He fucking deserved it. You're going to steal my shit? Here's a truck to break your truck. That isn't even yours. So that's number one. Number two, I am in the kitchen washing dishes. We're halfway done through renovations. The house had kind of always been like halfway done when he was alive. And now it was like weird to try to finish it, because it was almost like we were erasing him if we did. But he wouldn't have felt that way. He was just like, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, you do it. Because he would have me peel wallpaper when he was alive. And he would just sit there. And I'm like, are you going to help? He's like, no, I've done this for 40 fucking years plus. I was like, okay. So we're in the kitchen doing dishes. And I don't remember what we were talking about. But my grandpa was a gambler. And he was so good at gambling that we didn't know he started online gambling, which is such an issue in America. But he's good at gambling. I'm not kidding. He started with 2 pennies on this internet game, blackjack or poker. And within a year, the year before he died, he made $30,000. So we inherited that because he left everything to just me and my mom. None of his other kids, none of his other grandkids. So again, favoritism. So him being good at poker, he would go to Vegas a lot before he was sick, and his whole life he loved that world because he was a musician. He loved to gamble. So we had these big chunky dice that were his, that were like souvenirs from Vegas. And the crazy part is we're washing dishes and we hear a clatter on the ground right behind us. And on top of the fridge in this little cardboard box that they originally came from were the 6 dice. Okay. And when they fell on the floor, each pair of dice was a combination of numbers that equaled 7. The only reason that's important was because my grandpa's favorite number, I have his favorite lighter. It's 777. And I'm just like, because my mom noticed it first. And I was like, girl, you're reaching. Like, I thought she was, and I was like, wait, no. Oh my God, the fuck? And those are his dice, and they were put far back. There's no way they would have just fallen. And then even if they fell, why would it be paired? Each pair was together and it equaled 7. I'm like, what the fuck? It's almost like he was able to slow down time and make them fall that way. It was so strange, but it was just like prank number 2, you know? So then the third thing, I'm babysitting and I'm upstairs and it's in this house, and I hear my youngest brother, who at that time was 4, and he's calling up to me. And he didn't sound distressed. He was just kind of just like, I need you to come down. Like, can you, something's happening, you know? But it wasn't like he was afraid. So I came downstairs, and the way that you come down the stairs, it's like this old 2-story house where, like, as you walk and you're on the second half of the stairs to come down, there's the cutoff of like the floor that you were just on. So like if you look, you could look under, and like the roof of the main floor is there, you know? So as I'm coming down, it's slowly revealed to me that I see the 2 doors that lock at the top and the bottom with the bolt. They're to the sun porch. It's like the, what are they called? What are the name of those doors? French doors that open 2 doors. We had just installed them. Okay, brand new. They locked great. They were tight, airtight, whatever. My point, I'm babysitting. I knew I was going to be upstairs. I knew that my youngest brother was going to be downstairs watching Blue's Clues or something. So I didn't want to leave it unlocked because crazy uncles and violent family, you know, what if they want to rob us because we got the house? So when I come downstairs, I see that it looked as though they had just started, they were almost done closing, as if somebody was gently closing them. The thing about the fact that my brother is standing there and he's watching me and he's like pointing at the door as it's closing so slowly, which they didn't do on their own. And I'm like, how did you open the door? The only way that he could have opened those doors was if he got on a chair, pulled the top pin down, and then did the one on the floor. There was no chair. There was no stool. He was just like, do you see this? And I was like, how did you open the door? He goes, Grandpa keeps opening and closing the doors. And I was like, excuse me? He's like, yeah, I was watching my show and he kept doing it. And I was just like, is he here right now? Like, do you see me? He was like, no, he left right when I told you to come downstairs. I was like, where did he go? He goes, outside. Just so casual, you know, which I was excited. I wasn't afraid, but I was just like, oh my God, you know, like it was just another confirmation. I didn't see him or feel him or anything, but it's like, it was very obvious that he was making his presence known to each of us, my mom, myself, my youngest brother. The really big one for me was the final part. And there never is a final part with him. He's done so much more over the years, but this is the one that sticks out because it was a shared experience. I was on the couch. The house was done. So this was a couple years later. We're on the couch. We're watching a show. I feel like I zoned out, and I feel like maybe my brothers did too. But it was something that we did because my brothers and I have a very strong bond, and we have each other, and we still do to this day. We're very close. So there's the TV in front of us, and a little to the left behind it is a window that if you were outside, that's the driveway that you park in, and then you can either go to the back door or go to the front door from there, but it's the side of the house. And it's gravel, okay? That's an important detail. We're watching TV. It's like maybe 5 p.m. summer-ish time. So it's like sort of light out still, grayish looking. And we're watching TV and the show is going and I kind of zone out and first I hear footsteps walking up the gravel driveway. And I sort of just like, I'm thinking, oh, someone will come to the front door and knock. And for whatever reason, they're walking up the driveway first. You don't have to. There's a walking path. Weird. Or maybe someone parked and we didn't hear them, which is, again, not possible. The footsteps, it's just like 1, 2, 3. And then this thing happens where time slows down. I see the top shoulder stripes, not cut off, but a t-shirt, like a polo style shirt, white shirt, black and brown stripes. That's my grandpa's shirt. I know, like, my brain was like, whoa, what is that? Because it was the corner of my eye at first. I hear the gravel footsteps, see that. I see the head and the shoulders, the hair, that my grandpa just so casually walked by the window. And I said nothing, but I froze. I got full body chills. And my brother next to me goes, did you guys just see that? And my mom was like crying. She goes, oh my God, I thought I was losing my mind. So we all run outside and nothing. But the 6 of us sitting, I'm like, oh my God, how are you doing this? And, it's just like, it was so brief, but it was so intentional because he knew that we were all going to be sitting there. And that was his moment to just be like, hey guys. But it was just like, he didn't even need to. It's just like the fact that it's almost like he was coming home. Like he walked up the driveway to go through the back door to come inside to sit at his table. I think because his experience and his process and my experience with him in understanding when he was near death is why I'm not afraid to die. I mean, yeah, I have already once and come back, but I was so little. But now I'm just kind of like the work that I do spiritually, the fact that I'm a certified death doula, the fact that I'm continuing my education. I want to do end of life care in a spiritual way. So it's either chaplaincy or creating a new thing. It's that process that started it for me, was just like, oh my God. And then I realized my experiences that I had during and even when he was passed and no longer here physically, people have in hospice all the time. People have when they're at home and they're dying at home. Like you hear about it, the most common stories and tropes we hear is like the old Victorian house, the lady in black or the lady in white. It's like, yeah, well, I also think that like their lives were intense and full of hardship and they died too young. But then you hear about the other stories like mine, where it's just like, no, this was a man that lived he was 69, he would have been 70. And which is weird, he died before 70 because 7, it's almost like ironic. But all the things that I knew about him as a person, like he was just as much a force in life as he is now in death, if not stronger. I'm talking about him right now and I know he's here and I know he's probably fucking laughing because he thinks it's funny. I love having this support and this connection. I love that we have all had shared experiences. My youngest brother, just to go back a little bit with a little more detail, my youngest brother, who is now an adult, he's 20 years old. I tried to remind him of that story with the doors and my grandpa opening it and closing it. And it kind of breaks my heart. He's like, I don't really remember him. I wish I had more memories of him. And I don't remember when that happened. He's like, but I believe you because I didn't understand that what it meant that when he died, I just knew that I was sad that he wasn't here anymore. But I knew that he was still around because I just knew. And I was like, hold on to that because you're right. So yeah, I love you, Grandpa Jim. You're cool. You're not a piece of shit. Thanks. Thanks for giving me a cool story to tell. He's done other stuff too. He's warned me about people to stay away from. He hangs out with my other grandfather. I randomly had some psychic that I decided to sit down with because I usually don't get readings from people ever unless I feel compelled to, because I can feel that they have a gift. This lady knew dick about me. She knew nothing about me. I didn't wear any jewelry, anything. I wasn't even wearing all black that day. And she called out some stuff that I was not even asking. I didn't ask anything. I didn't even give her context clues. And she just goes, well, both of your grandfathers are here. And I was like, go on. She said something about my grandfather on my dad's side. She goes, well, I see him behind you and he has his hand on your shoulder. And I was just like, whatever, lady. But then she said something that he was showing her to prove that it was him. And I was like, really? She goes, yeah, he's picking up dirt and he's running it through his hands to let it go on the ground, almost as if he's like doing a ritual. And I was like, I started crying. I was just like, holy shit. Because that was something he did. He would take the earth and form a circle to bring in that element. There's things that he did that no one else would know unless he taught you that. Because my uncle taught me that because he learned it from him. The fuck? And then with my other grandpa, she was just like, yeah, they hang out, they laugh all the time. In fact, they like to pass around the peace pipe. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me, lady? Peace pipe to my grandpa on my mom's side was a joke for weed. Peace pipe on my father's side was literally a peace pipe with tobacco and herbs in a sweat lodge. The fact that they both were coming together in that way and they thought it was funny to fuck with me by saying that, I was just like, I hate you guys so much. But I love it. In the work that I do now, or like the spiritual practice that I have now, I have found that who is meant for me will find me. I have found that if information is meant to be shared, it will appear. And my biggest focal point, and it took me years to figure this out, was it's not about the money. It's not about the popularity. Those things are nice. I welcome them. I accept them. I will allow them if they're meant to happen. And a lot of the time they are. They do. Don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful. But here's the thing. For me, the whole point of this story is this started with, what is that feeling? Why do I know that this is for me? And I carry that with me because what I've learned when I work with others, especially now, is I like being a bridge for them. I like helping them in a way of like either advocating for them and speaking for them, especially in like end of life care, or just in life. So like I'll have people who come to me that they're broken, and this is in their own words. It's no judgment, but they think they're fucked up and they're weird and they're stupid and they're nothing's ever going to go right. And if they're meant to find me, and they always do, I somehow say something that doesn't make sense to me, and I to this day, when I read for someone, I forget whatever the fuck I said to them, and I think that's a blessing, because it's not for me, it's for them. What I've learned now is that the point and my mantra is give people tools to walk away with, or a better understanding of who they are. Maybe not their purpose, but just a better understanding of what you see that they should be seeing. And so it's almost like, yeah, advocacy. It's like, no. You're subdued in the context of like, can't see the forest for the trees. But spirit is showing me what you're right on the edge of it. Like you have the details, like here it is. And I'm grateful for that. And I feel like my grandpa did that for me. My friend Bobby's done that for me. I've had a lot of people in my life do that for me because it took me a long time. These people saved my life. So pay it forward. Don't be a piece of shit, you know? And it just, if you're not spiritual, like you can still do that. So I just think it's cooler to be this. I think it's more magical. It literally is magic. It's like everything in my life was not by coincidence. It was by design. It was by intent. I'm not saying that like everything's perfect, but I like this part of who I am. It's my anchor. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about it, but like that's my ghost story.
That was episode 5, titled Zachariah. I'd like to thank Z for sharing his story. I'd also like to thank him for being so open and honest during our interview. As we were talking, it became clearer and clearer that we shared a lot of similar experiences, as well as outlooks on the paranormal. And since our interview, I'm happy to say that we've become good friends. And he is someone whose expertise and opinion on the paranormal and spiritual I value. I look at Zachariah's story, and I see how all of those experiences, all those challenges, all those setbacks, and all those victories influenced him as a person as well as all of his practices. They all led to new perspectives, new knowledge, new connections. And it illustrates how it's important to grow and adapt your general interest or spiritual practices to wherever you're at in life at that time. And if you do that, you might be led down paths you've never considered. But going down those paths might change your life and the lives of the people you encounter for the better. I also wanted to note that when we were recording our interview and Zachariah was talking about his grandpa James and how he felt him there with him, it felt like someone was in the room with me. And that feeling didn't go away until he stopped telling that last story. And when I was editing this episode and got to that same part in the story, I got that same feeling. So James, if that was you, I hope you liked the episode. If you have a paranormal or anomalous story you'd like to share, you can email it to stories.thisstrangereality@gmail.com for a chance to be interviewed for the show. Again, that's stories.thisstrangereality@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.